Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Schinder here on Yesshift with
Steven Shinder.
the other Mr. Schinder, and we are thrilled to have a first-time offender, first-time hazing, first-time guest here, Michael Franklin, who has worked with a few people. He's worked with John Anderson, Tony K. Allen, Chris Squire, uh, Paul McCartney, Todd Rundgren, John McLaughlin, Billy Cobham, so many more. Chick Corea, the late great Chick Corea, Rick Wakeman, Patrick Moraz, and he's here to boost his career. Welcome, Michael. We're thrilled to have you on board. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for joining Steve and I. We are really excited to have you. There's so much to talk about. One of the main things, of course, is the new 1,000 hands. But I'm going to let Steve kick it off, and we'll see where all this goes.
Yeah, so for those who aren't that familiar, tell us how you got into music and what drew you to keys and whatnot.
As I was saying in the little preamble that we did before, I was a sickly little kid, and I was left out on a farm with my great grandparents who only spoke Italian, and they had no television, a Victrola and the radio, and a piano, and that's how I started the piano. After my recovery, and got back into you know going back to school with my friends, I wanted to continue, so my parents had bought me a little organ, and then I joined a local band playing the organ, and we um, won a Battle of the Bands contest, which made our first recording. And then we were off to the races, playing shows and learning songs, and
And
you know,
about how old were you at this point, Michael? About how old?
um, I was about 14.
Okay.
I was about 14 years old, and a friend of mine, his father was like a manager of a band. Well, they had a PA system, so they could lead the band. And he put us into a lot of different shows. And by the time I was 16, my father had gotten a promotion and moved. We had to move from Buffalo to outside of Chicago. And when I got to my new residence in Chesterton, Indiana, I was devastated because I mean, we're in the middle of cornfields. My house was surrounded by cornfields. I'm going to go, what is going to go on with my musical career? Right. And I'm sleeping in an unfinished house, helping my father finish the house. And one morning, knock at the door, and there's three beautiful girls at the door welcoming me to the community. Right.
Farm groupies.
So I was pretty happy. And then they introduced me to a guy who was a drummer. And then things went on to that. I formed my first band. They were, in a sense, to me, hicks. They didn't know anything about music. I was the top dog who had already done shows and whatever. And that my bands, progressed on and on and on until, I was doing professional things. I was hired by a local theater to be a band leader for like a lot of oldies guys,
Hmm.
Danny and the Juniors, the Drifters, the
Oh,
Planners. And I cut my teeth on that in a big theater as being a music director, writing charts. And then after that, Wolfman Jack hired me to be the band leader for his television show
oh, wow.
because I had that knowledge.
Yeah.
We were playing jazz and rock. And the idea that a lot of rock guys would play oldies rock and roll like heavy metal. They didn't get the nuances of it. Was really early rock and roll was from the big band era.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
all those guys like Bill Haley and all the people who played, they all had this big band jazz finesse. And
Yeah.
my brother and I and our guys were all playing jazz. So we brought that to the oldies shows, and all the oldies guys just loved it. They really, really loved it. And from then on, we progressed from the oldies on into more 60s and then more 70s. And then we moved to Florida, and Wolfman opened up his own club, and I
Mm,
was
yeah.
music director there. And with that, I sort of got a chance to pick the people I wanted to play with. Nashville Network started a television show called Little Darling's Rock and Roll Palace, which was on for 3 seasons and was in like 7 countries. And then it became, because of me, it became Wolfman Jack's Rock and Roll Palace. I did the negotiations with our network to change it to Wolfman. And me and Wolfman were very, very close friends. I remember going to rehearsal, a lunch during rehearsal, and hearing Ride Captain Ride on the radio. And I said, well, I love that song. And Wolf says, hey, man, you want to get Mike Panera? I know him. Next night, we flew Mike Panera to the show, and the band, we played Ride Captain Ride. And I've been I've been in Blues Image ever since. 30 years, I think. We've been doing Blues Image, you know.
Wow.
But it was sort of like that. It was like, who do you want on the show? You know, Joe Walsh, you know, all these different people. And then through my association with, I'm not letting you ask questions here.
That's okay.
What it is in my town in Indiana where I was doing the theater, there was a local music store called Rubino's, and it was like the center of the musical universe of Northern Indiana, which was a very musical part of the country. I'm telling you, Northern Indiana, Gary, Chesterton, Michigan City, Benton Harbor, Valparaiso, there were so many great bands. And you know, eventually the thing was to get into Chicago and play. And there was a music store there, and they had the Korg synthesizers, and I had a Korg synthesizer. So the shop owner said, hey, you know, show these kids how to use it, Mike. And I was showing them how to use it. Then the Korg, regional Korg guy came in, and he said, man, you really know what you're doing on that. He says, you wanted to be a clinician. I said, what? We'll give you free equipment, and we pay you to do some shows on the stuff. I said, man, that's a good job.
Yeah, who says no, right?
Right. So he took me around Midwest, and I played all kinds of cities, just my little show on, you know, a couple synthesizers, and, you know, playing everything from, you know, Yes stuff, and, you know, Emerson, Lake and Palmer stuff, whatever.
Oh, nice.
You know, and one time I did a clinic, and my partner was Chuck Lovell from the Rolling Stones. Well, he wasn't in the Stones yet.
Right.
He was in Sea Level, and then the Allman Brothers, and Chuck and I became good friends. And then they did a big clinic up in New York where all the clinicians from Korg from all around the country all came for like a seminar to introduce the new products and whatever. And Chuck and I were the last people to arrive at this, I think it was an Army base they put us on. And there was only one room left, so we had to room together. And it's sort of crazy because that's about the time he got the audition for the Rolling Stones. You know, and since then, you know, we've been close friends. He's played on a lot of stuff I've done. I've traveled around with the Stones, and, you know, and got a front row seat for that whole adventure for, you know, 30 years now. But he's one of my favorite people, and such a great artist and pianist. You know, I love that guy.
That's awesome.
You know, they came to China, you know, when I lived in China 15 years. And they came to China twice. I helped get the Stones their license from the Minister of Culture for their first tour. And with that, then I would, you know, go to the show. But I brought my Chinese wife to see the Stones on the 2013 show. And she thought we were going to a local bar to see a band. Yeah, we ended up getting, you know, front row and all access passes. And now she's a Rolling Stones, you know, authority.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah. So we were going to ask you about that. I know you lived in China for 15 years. You lived in Japan, one of my favorite places to go for a couple of years. What are the biggest differences and similarities in the way people view music between those two cultures? And I know that
or like in general, just various cultures.
It's a big difference. Really is a big difference. American people here are very sidetracked by all the other social medias, you know, video games, I'll say the NBA, all these different things that are, I mean, NBA is big in China, but music is so big in China. I think I've equated it to like one factor is that the way that young Chinese people get to socialize is through karaoke.
Okay.
And there's entire hotels that are only karaoke, all the rooms. young people, they rent their time, they invite their friends. The girl invites another girl to meet another guy, right? That's how people get together there. And the whole thing is all about music. So it's really crazy because some of the music that is famous in China is stuff that we wouldn't consider to be popular there, like the Platters.
Oh, really? Wow.
It comes from a young movie where, you know, a young dorky kid is trying to get the hot girl, and he realizes that the only way he can do it is through the karaoke. And when he gets up to the karaoke to sing the Platters, he is like marvelous, and they're all amazed, and he gets the girl, right? So a lot of songs that you wouldn't think were really popular. I mean, of course, Hotel California is like the #1 song in China. It has been for 20 years.
Wow.
And then you got Right Here Waiting for You by Richard Marx. Songbird by Kenny G. You know, the Platters tunes. He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother by the Hollies.
What an interesting mix.
A lot of it, I believe, is because, which leads me to a really funny story. Don't lose that thought, Michael. A lot of it comes from the Vietnam War.
That makes sense.
The GIs were playing American music there, and the Chinese were getting it. And this is the story that I get from that. One of my closest friends in the world, I'll say one of my mentors, was J.I. Allison, the drummer for the Crickets. I produced the Crickets. I played with the Crickets, you know, on the famous Clear Lake shows,
right?
You know, whenever they would do, right, I would play piano and sing backup art and whatever. And Jerry Allison wrote the song "Whoa Whoa Yeah Yeah, Love You More Than I Can Say." Whoa whoa yeah yeah, right?
Yeah,
more than I can say. Anyway, that is a big song in China, so big that one time I went down to a city called Kunming, and they had like our version of the octogenarian Preservation Hall band, right? All these guys who are like 80 and 90 years old playing Chinese music. And I went and saw that, and they played. And I asked the guy, I said, you know, where'd you learn that song? He said, oh, old ancient Chinese song. And I recorded the conversation. And then I also recorded a guy playing the flute in Shanghai in the middle of a square playing the song. And I gave it to Jerry, and he said, you know, that's crazy. They got it from the Vietnam War. It was the tail end. That's where they heard that melody. It's in the Chinese scale. It's all pentatonic. So, you know, Chinese only have 5 notes generally in their music.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's it.
How interesting. And do I understand it correctly? And I may be way off, but would it be fair to say, Michael, that in Japan for decades, what's been huge there is hard rock, heavy metal, and prog?
Oh, yeah.
More contemporary to some degree.
Well, same thing with the Philippines. You know, when I was in China, I had to leave every month on the visa that you get, no matter who you are, until a certain point in time, until I got my 10-year visa. I'd have to leave the country every month for a day.
Yeah.
So I would fly. Where am I going to go this week? I'm going to go to Mongolia. I'm going to go to Thailand. I'm going to go to Japan. Philippines and Japan were in a sort of the same thing. Army bases, 70s and 80s, you know, big classic rock like Survivor and Journey and Starship and Toto. That is the music that they really love. I just had Marty Friedman, you know, from the original guitar player for Megadeth.
Yeah.
Here in the studio for a week rehearsing before he did his American tour. You know, Marty moved to Japan, and his whole band was Japanese. Fantastic players.
Wow.
I mean, unbelievable players. But it's sort of the thing where that heavy metal stuff became sort of the macho idiom for America. And, you know, people think, oh, you know, people don't like America. You know, the word for America in Chinese is Megua. It means beautiful place. And we are Megoran. We sure Megoran. We're Americans. We are the people who live in the beautiful place. So imagine when they're trying to say something bad about you.
Right. Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Those people who live in the beautiful place, and that terrible place, the beautiful place, But they all love the American style idea, even like Elvis. I mean, in China, Elvis is Mo Wong. Mo Wong. It means like big hair, or the other translation is Cat King.
Oh, wow.
Cats,
Yeah.
So they really do love American music, jazz, and of course the rock. And I think that has been the reason why classic rock has survived in those countries. I mean, I went to I was in Tokyo with ARW last time they were there. I spent time with John there. We were working on something. I think it was the 1000 Hands tour. And I mean, the people just went crazy, over that music. Just, they love it. If it's complex, they appreciate it.
Yeah.
Where here, they don't want anything too difficult.
Yeah. They don't want to twist an ankle or hurt their hips dancing to something in 11/5.
Butt or twerking, they're not interested.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And in the 90s, you worked on some animated projects. What was that like, and how did that contrast from some other work that you had done?
Believe it or not, all the stuff sort of blends in together, the networking of it. When I did the Rick Wakeman, well, while I was working with Melanie, her husband introduced me to a guy whose father was an artist for Popeye and Felix the Cat, Chiquita Banana, Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Wow.
His name is Oriolo. Don has become one of my closest friends in my life. He's a very, very artistic guy, a music guy who was with Warner Chappell Music. He's written hundreds of songs that have been recorded by Gloria Gaynor, Benny King, all these people, and he's an artist. So me and him sort of clicked. Melanie's husband introduced me to him, and then I was on tour and met Rick Wakeman. Well, my brother and I played with Rick Wakeman for a Korg clinic. That was it. We went around England,
nice.
and played with Rick, and then we ended up at Ronnie Scott's to do a concert.
Oh, nice. That's a great venue.
So we played that concert, and then me and Rick were talking, and anyway, I said, I wanted to produce an album. The idea was, do some of his greatest hits, but redo them, with modern synthesizers and whatever. And he was all for it. Any case, Don financed it. He approved it, wanted to put it on his record label. And that's what got me to start working with Rick.
Oh.
Via Melanie. And then Don Oriolo, who had Felix the Cat, I started writing music for Felix the Cat. Then I started writing music for Baby Felix, which is a television show in Japan.
Oh, wow.
I had to go to Japan with those people to write the music. And then we got a job with Hello Kitty. So I wrote this show, The Musical Adventures of Felix the Cat, featuring Hello Kitty.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to Sanrio Pearl Land, which is the Disneyland of Hello Kitty.
Yeah.
And I wrote a live show for them, which lasted for many years. And, wrote the music for Hello Kitty.
That's
so
awesome.
It all sort of weaves together, I mean, as long as you don't put up the block of styles, some people think music is only one style, to me, it can't be, because I've worked with, Latino, Irish, Mongol. I got a new project that I can't talk about yet, but it'll be on the Yesshift eventually with the National Mongolian Orchestra.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah, really good.
Very cool.
We saw you post recently about how back in '91 you were at the rehearsals for the Union tour, the opening show in Pensacola, even appearing in the Yes Years documentary for a little bit.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, could you share any memories from that time? It was such a huge thing.
Yeah, a couple of them. One was Rick invited me to come up there because I had this. I was working helping this charity, Give Kids the World, which is like for terminally ill kids.
Mm-hmm.
I knew the director of it, and I came up with this idea that Young Chang, who when I was doing all my Wolfman Jack television shows for like 6 years, I gave Young Chang Kurzweil credits at the end of every show for no reason at all. I just thought it was good for me to do it. And they end up giving me a ton of equipment. They gave me a white grand piano, which didn't sound very nice, right? And I was doing a show, and on the show were two other piano players, Jerry Lee Lewis and Billy Preston.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember Jerry was in his element, but Billy said, "Man, you know what you ought to do? You ought to sign the keys of that thing and give it away to charity. Take a tax deduction." That's what he told me.
Wow, how funny.
And that's what I did. I got all the keys. I took them all out. I sent them all around the world. A one key followed Elton John on tour, like from city to city to city.
Oh,
My
wow.
FedEx bill was over $7,000. And everybody, Stevie Wonder gave me a thumbprint. I got, Emerson. I mean, think of any genre of music. I got all the country guys, Mickey Gilley. I got Floyd Kramer.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
Henry Mancini. McCartney gave me a signature. Bruce Hornsby, of course. Billy Joel. I mean, 52, things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I brought two of the keys to Pensacola, one for Rick to sign, and it's not in the documentary, but I have video of that.
Oh, great.
They sent me a whole reel of outtakes of that, which I think, and so Rick is signing, him and Tony are signing the keys, and that went into that. So that was part of it. That was sort of like the reason I went. But then too, they were doing the rehearsals, and the theater of the round was going around.
Yeah.
Just and every once in a while, when Rick would come around, he would say something funny every time he circled back. He'd say something hilarious. But I do remember a great conversation with Chris Squire at lunch. It was just me and Chris sitting there, and Chris had a sort of very caustic wit. I don't know if you ever really talked to him, but
yeah, I did once. Yeah,
very sweet guy, but he could be very sarcastic in a very funny way. You'd laugh. It's terrible what he's saying, but you love the way he was saying it. It was so cool.
Yeah.
So he was talking about my dear friend Patrick Moraz, and I just sit there and listen to. He says, "So I hear you work with Patrick," and he says, "That's, just so funny. Swiss rock star. Doesn't seem to work." But,
right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But that was it.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned Patrick, and I wanted to use him as an example for something. There's a lot of musicians and even more music fans who don't really know what a producer does. And I was thinking about this last night when I was re-listening after a long time to Patrick's album that you did with him, Window of Time. And what came to mind was, I thought that would be a great example for you to explain, because there's a lot of musicians that have only gigged, they've never recorded. There's a lot of music fans that have never been in a studio. They've never seen interviews with producers. To me, a producer's job in music is similar to a director's job in film. They're the ones that make it look the way it looks, and the producer in music's the ones that helps make it sound the way it sounds. The actor is the artist or the band. If we took Patrick's album, which is just piano, as bare as it could be, one man, one musician, and someone might think, well, what would a producer do? You stick a microphone, you get a good sound, and there you go. But I think that'd be a great example for you to please explain what is the producer's job and what makes for a great producer.
I did a class at Full Sail Recording School one time called Producer from Soup to Nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And the producer, it depends on the artist, what you're doing. I mean, some producer, like in some of the cases, I write the music, I come up with the concept, I write the music, I get the artist to record it in a certain way. Artists can be their own worst enemy. They don't know what the people want. For me, it's like, I want to do something that works. All right. You've got your idealism in music, and you've got, stuff that would just scare people away. What would really work, and and the best that you could do. Somewhere in between, my piano teacher, Alan Swain, told me, is wisdom, where you can bring those two together. So in all kinds of things about production, sometimes I was just moral support of helping the guy, do something, or sometimes I was doing everything. In Patrick's sense, I want to say I sort of came up with the concept. And then when he was doing something, I would, I've got tapes of it. I've got tapes of the conversations. I have the original, a time we did it through before we went into the studio to do it. We did it in my studio. And then I said, you know what? It's kind of sterile because it's just in a studio. So we did it live. We did it live at Full Sail. We didn't allow any clapping, but the vibe was live. So we had tickets, put the piano into the middle of Full Sail, and invited people to come in there, just hoping the chairs didn't creak too bad. But the piano was mic'd up so well, and then Patrick went and did his thing. And then it was sort of, trying to not just the EQ it, but the presentation of it. Sometimes it's just the whole concept of it. This song should go there. No, look at a big beginning, down a little bit, go to a thing. You got to the end, you got to do something low before the climax. Sometimes it's just direction of the mode of everything.
Yeah, and how it unfolds and how the musical story is told. Yeah.
This song is too close to that song. They shouldn't be that together. So it's a lot of different things, But I mean, Patrick is a true artist. I mean, with all artists, you got to be careful of claiming, you're trying to help them, but you want them to be them. You're just trying to help them the best they can. That's what I try to do. I have to sometimes tiptoe around. It's not ego. Sometimes it's they believe that they're in a certain place now, and they shouldn't have to do that. They shouldn't have to do things that their fans want. Me, I think you can hardly ever do that. You can hardly ever do exactly what you want, unless when you're playing to a focus group that works. Somebody can hook a great idea and that's it in its entirety. But you have to have the courage to go to the artist and say, but I think it might be better this way. Good artists will at least listen to you.
Right. And hopefully that's why they hired you too, to a degree, right? For input and feedback, objectivity.
I fortunately I've had a lot of great, camaraderie and trust with the people that I work with, so that when you're telling them the stuff, they know it's not like you're looking down on them or it's ego. You're trying to look at. I think that the average listener will think that's a mistake. There are some things. I mean, some of the music that I have that I've never put out would clear a room.
Sometimes it's safe to just stay with something like Sound Chaser or Close to the Edge and go total commercial.
Yeah, right. Some artists, as they get older, want to slow it down a little bit. They want to get a little bit mellower and stuff like that. But their audiences are looking for the red meat.
Yeah.
They want that. They want, in Yes's case, they want another Awaken.
Yeah.
They want another Sound Chaser. They're not looking for another
Onward. Which is beautiful, but I get that. Yeah. And would you agree that producers and composers, musicians, songwriters, their sensibilities change as they get older? A 50 or 60 or 70-year-old artist is different than how they were when they were 20 in a lot of ways. They've gone through life. They've experienced different things. They've aged. There's so many different, maybe they've gone through a couple divorces or
all
four.
The goalposts are moving all the time.
Right.
The people, their sensibility about stuff that you would have, the fidelity of what you listened to back in the 60s compared to now. I mean, even if you play great music, if the fidelity was that, people would just pan it.
Yeah.
You can get a piece of music and produce it. You can get a lousy piece of music, and with production, you can make it passable to listen to. So, I mean, there's such new toys that I have recently that I'm using on some of the stuff where I'm taking passages that need a little help. And then that gives you an idea about, what can replace that? This. And then you place it, and it served the purpose of being a catalyst.
Right.
You know,
Awesome. Thanks for sharing all that. Because, like I say, I truly believe there's a lot of people that don't know what is that producer credit. So I appreciate you sharing that.
sometimes it's just a guy with the money,
Right.
but I think that when you're talking about people like, Rick Rubin or Trevor Horn or people of that caliber, Jeff Lynne,
Yeah.
they have their stamp that they put on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you listen to a Jeff Lynne production, you go, oh, that's Jeff Lynne.
Yeah. Mike Stone, same thing with Journey in Asia.
Thing.
Yeah.
I sort of have my little formula that I'm working on that, this, every time I promoted a concert, if you had one artist on it, you had to make sure that people like the one artist.
Yeah.
But then when you started doing shows that had 3 artists on it, you got more people. When you did 5 or 6 artists, the place is packed because you're hitting all the different sensibilities of all these different people.
Yeah.
So that was basically the idea for, 1,000 Hands.
Yeah, let's move into that. Steve, do you have a specific question you want to start with?
I actually have the CD here in front of me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to ask, so 1,000 Hands, lots of fans already know some of the material originated from a long time ago and then got finished a few years ago. So how'd you get involved with John's album, and how 1,000 Hands come together?
Okay, remember that Rick Wakeman show at Ronnie Scott's?
Yeah.
The guy who played before us is a keyboard player by the name of Brian Chatton.
Okay.
Now, Brian Chatton was in The Warriors with John.
Yeah.
Oh.
He was in Flaming Youth with Phil Collins. He played with Meatloaf. He played with Sheena Easton. He played with the Hollies.
Oh, wow.
And anyway, from that show, Brian gave me a tape. Oh, actually, Brian, at the rehearsals at Ronnie Scott's, that was the very first day I ever met John.
Oh.
Brian said, why don't you come down to the club called the Admiral and meet John? I said, great. So now so we go down there and there's John. He's in a red trench coat. It's like, wow, it's John Anderson. And we talked. It was very cordial. And my brother and I had to get up to go to the restroom. And we're both standing there at the urinal. Sorry, fans.
It is what it is.
And at the same time, we both went, sharp. And that's been our inside joke ever. I mean, it was just totally impromptu because my brother and I are on that sort of mind meld together.
Yeah.
He answers my questions, whatever. He's my lifelong partner in crime. So Brian gave me his tape and I loved all the songs on the tape. So I actually helped Brian emigrate to the United States.
Oh.
Okay. Was living in Chicago. He came and lived there, and he met a girlfriend or whatever. And then I moved to Florida, and then he followed me to Florida for a little while. And then he eventually went to, I think it was because of Tony Kaye. Tony was in California, so he went out. But Brian had written 5 songs for another project with John. And anyway, Brian had given them to me and said, Mike, could you orchestrate these? He just had the basic tapes. So I did. I think I did 4 songs of the 5. I did 4 songs of the 5 in my studio with my guys and everything. Same guys who played on the Rick Wakeman album, all the same guys. And then I remember that there was interest in a record contract for it. And I flew out to California and I met with John and I met with the lawyer, but there was some problem that I, was above my pay grade to understand why it wasn't working. John said, hey, this is all good. Let's do it. And then it just fell down. And as John puts it, he was busy with Yes and Kataro and Vangelis and everything else he was doing. And I was doing TV shows and touring with all other kind of people. And then one time I got a call to play with Iron Butterfly.
Oh,
so with Mike Panera. So I was at the Bakersfield Music Fest.
Oh, weird. So
I went to the Bakersfield Music Fest with my wife, who had just brought here from China. We had just moved back from China. It was like 2015, I think. So I said, John only lives like maybe 50 miles or something like that from where I'm at. So I called up a mutual friend and said, hey, tell John I want to meet with him, So we met. I went to his place and we met. And we started talking about doing the record. And he forgot all about it. So he said, man, I got to go dig for the tapes, So he found the tapes. He sent them to me. I had them baked in New Jersey. Then I got the stuff and I started working on it. Since I had it digitally, I could sit back and see what I had, what stuff passed the bake test.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Chris Squire bass parts were a little degraded. My brother had to play, to freshen them up. A lot of them were good, but I didn't want to erase Chris's bass stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
My brother had played a couple parts. Majority, 90% of it's Chris, but some of the things were a little muddled. And then I started replacing people. I mean, most of it was synthesizers. A lot of it was Brian synthesizers. And a lot of those synthesizers had, I want to say, were dated by their sound. M1, sound 101.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Kurzweil 250, sound 404.
8-bit Casio.
Yeah, whatever. So, but a lot of it was really, really good stuff. I just had to reinvent the sound, play it over it, some more fidelity. So, but a lot of it was just like 5 tracks or whatever. And then I was doing an album with Larry Coryell, the great jazz player, and my brother was Larry's bass player. Oh. And I was working on the first track, which was Activate. And I had a pseudo acoustic guitar I was playing on the Kurzweil. And I said, Larry, you want to play on this? He said, sure. So Larry went in and he played on it. And then said, it's beautiful, man. I said, I got another one for you later on. So he played on like 3 tracks. Larry Coryell played on 3 tracks. And then I was doing something with Billy Cobham. And then I asked Billy to play on a track. And John didn't know about any of this yet. And then I had Ian Anderson play on a track. And Ian said that you can use some of it, none of it, or all of it. And I used most of it. And that is one interesting cat, I got to tell you. He's one of the most intelligent guys I've ever talked to, but he doesn't suffer fools, which I probably am. But, very, very matter-of-fact guy. And but he played on that, and then he was gracious enough to play on Robby Steinhardt's record. And so he's a wonderful guy and a superior musician, Daily, I started thinking about the songs and saying, okay, who could play this part? Oh, Tower of Power is coming to town. Oh, the song Makes Me Happy was something I think John sang me over the telephone. I had a thing of it, and what I did is I did this whole production of it, and I even did a video. So when he came, I sat him down and he saw the whole thing. It was just like, you know what? I really appreciate the guy giving me the liberty to do a lot of things. Yeah. He gave me liberty to do a lot of things. And the thing is, it wasn't so much liberty because, as I say, John is in my DNA. If I could think of 5 albums that are me, it would be something like The Firebird, Close to the Edge, The Story of I.
Yes.
Nice. Beautiful
right?
album by Pat. Yeah.
Marcus,
Tarkus, yeah.
Elias of Sun Hillow,
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because of Brick.
That's Steve's favorite album ever, Elias of Sun Hillow.
The thing is
What-
that
One of them. It's high up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
the thing is that the whole idea of what John calls the long form, you know,
Mm.
I, you know, all my stuff, I always like the idea of it being like Robbie's album was like a, you know, like an opera. Things sort of
Yeah.
flow into each other, and uh, the same thing with 1,000 Hands. You know, I mean, there was one song that Brian wrote. It was called Now, which was a little 3-minute ditty. It was just the same thing over and over again. And John sang it. It was a beautiful little song. And then I cut it up into 3 spots and put it at the beginning with just a guitar. And John loved the idea it was just a guitar. You know, it's, you know, because it was a great song, but to do it, there was nothing more to it. A beautiful song. And then the next part, I did like a Vivaldi string quartet, and it was beautiful. And then that led to Now and Again, the very last song in the record,
Yeah.
which was, I thought was a great, you know, bookends kind of, you know, production idea.
Yeah.
And I had a local guitar player, great guitar player by the name of Bobby Coble, who teaches at UCF, and he's a great jazz player. He plays in the band Death, right? A heavy metal band, but he's a great jazz guitar player and great classical guitar player. So I had him come in and he played some nice classical guitar. And I thought to myself, man, I wish that was Steve Howe. So I reached out and Steve played on the track. So I sent it to John, and John says, beautiful guitar. I said, yeah, it's Steve. He was like, Steve Morris? You know, because Steve Morris had played on Activate. No,
Yeah.
Steve Howe. That made John write the words to sing
Yeah.
to Steve. And
It's a
I think it
beautiful
was a
song.
great moment. You know, I'm proud I pushed the envelope on some of that stuff, but I'm saying, you know, he's the artist. It's all up to him, you know, but I'm grateful that he allowed me to, you know, to say, hey, let's do this. Oh yeah, okay, let's try it. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
I've worked with some people, it's their way or the highway.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel comfortable with it. If it sucks, it sucks. I can't do anything about it. And my name is on it as a producer.
Yeah.
You know, there are some things on 1,000 Hands that didn't make the grade. And, you know, which maybe in a producer's track, you know, will come out later. I mean, the song Activate Me had about 3 or 4 minutes cut out of it.
Oh, wow.
Oh wow.
Which I think is, as I listen to the original version, I think is very powerful. As John would say to my engineer, said, John, you got to do it. You got to do it. He would say, Matt, that's the version that you listen to in your car.
That's funny. When you musically, what kind of preview could you give people as far as how chapter 2 may differ musically, if at all? Is it a lot more the same? Is it an embellishment? Is it kind of off to the side and slightly different twists?
And is any of it also based on older material, or is it all new?
Only one song. If the one song of Brian's makes it to the last grade, I think it's a beautiful song. It's just whether, you know, John's the decider. You know, if, you know, I'm helping him put the concept together. He sends me songs, I work on them. We go back and forth until the song is finished, and then I got a pile of songs. What is going to make the concept? Now, I have, if you're talking about vinyl, for side A, I've made an entire concept, which, you know, I mean, we'll see if it cuts the mustard. But a lot of it is, I always contend that this isn't a John Anderson solo album, as I tell him. You know, it's definitely John done the ship, but it's a collaboration between all the people who join in and come to the party. You know, because, you know, Trevor Rabin, Rick Wakeman, Jerry Goodman, Robby Steinhardt, Joe Bonamassa, Bruce Hornsby, Victor Wooten, Tower of Power.
Yeah.
for me, it's a joy because a lot of times as I see people who are coming to town on Polestar, I say, okay, I'm going to do that session, you know?
Right. How interesting. Thanks for sharing that and giving us a bit of a preview. In the time we have left, we want to definitely touch on working with Robby Steinhardt, and what a beautiful album. And one of my questions is, when you began working with Robby on the project, was there any discussion of him saying anything like, I don't want this to sound like Kansas, or it might sound somewhat like Kansas because it's me, or it's going to sound like Kansas, but now because I am like,
Well, it's funny.
can you share some of that?
I have some video of Robby in here playing on Activate Me. And, he was just, first off, it was hard to get to Robby. He had so many people blocking me from trying to get to him. Finally, I got through to a friend, Ronnie D, who is the son of the famous Joey D, the Peppermint Twist.
Yeah.
A really, really great artist. He got me in touch with a guy named Rick Moon, who was playing in a band with Robby. And Rick was kind enough to help me have a discussion with Robby, and so it was like, okay, great. He's going to come out. He's going to play in a giant. And I thought, am I going to get along with this guy? He's such a curmudgeon, But by the end of the day, we were fast friends. And after he played on a couple things, I had a song that I had just done with Billy Cobham, and it's Climb to Grace. No, Rise of the Phoenix. It was originally called Climb to Grace. And Robby played on it. And after a while, I thought, Robby, why don't you do an album? Yeah, I said, well, come on, man, let's put our heads together. Anyway, we started seeing each other every couple weeks. And then we started playing on a record. My brother and I had some tunes. Robby had some ideas, and we started putting this thing together. And then, I saw it. I saw the whole thing. And when he wasn't afraid of using Not in Kansas anymore, I thought, okay, great. Here's our concept. And then I dreamt up the album cover front and back.
Oh, which is great. I love the album art. Yeah.
And Tom Lupo did the album art for me. He did a great job. And, it was all just the whole concept. And then putting some of the Wizard of Oz, quotes in the songs.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing at the end with the witch and, not in Kansas. You're not in Kansas anymore. It was a mistake, but I decided to keep it.
That's awesome.
We had this new plugin called Altar Boy. And so I sang Not in Kansas anymore, but it allowed you to move the whole thing up an octave.
Mm-hmm.
But it became the Munchkins. That's great. Let's use that.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great album that is. And it's so sad that he passed before it got released. How was he satisfied with it when it was done?
I have a picture of me and him sitting here like a Science Fiction 3000, looking at the monitor, listening to the final mixes before I sent them off to Bernie Grugman to master them. And he totally loved it.
Oh, that's great.
And some of the things like the tune called Pizzicato.
Yeah.
So he one night he suggested to me, he said, hey, I want to do something with Pizzicato. So I started writing a tune. My brother started writing it too. We sort of fused them together. And then that's the one I decided that Ian should play on because, I put like a recorder and everything, and he loved it. And he did such a great job. And I suggested he played flute and penny whistle, which he did. And it was great. It's great.
When I first heard that album, I imagined like, wow, what a show this would be. The music is just so built for that. Live presentation, right?
So depressing. We were in the rehearsals already. I already spent hundreds and hundreds of hours making up keyboards to play the show live. And we just got together to do the rehearsals, and then he got sick. It was terrible because a tour with Robby with the band I had, I had 2 guitar players, Tommy Kelton, the guy who plays on 1000 Hands, and Jim Gentry, who played on Robby's Not in Kansas Anymore. 2 totally opposite guitar players.
Yeah.
One of them is Steve Howe, the other one's Trevor Rabin. You know, we're the styles, right? And then my brother on bass, and it was Rayford Griffin from 1000 Hands on drums.
Oh, wow.
You know, which is something interesting too. You're a drummer. I mean, most of my productions normally have 5 drummers per album.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, Robby's album's got Billy Ashball, who plays with the Moody Blues.
Yeah.
Rayford Griffin, Matt Brown, and somebody else. Carmen Apiece? No. But I mean, normally my 1000 Hands has 5 drummers.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. We definitely have to have you on again if you'll put up with us. Well, put up with me, Steve. Steve's the easy one.
The thing is, I love to get people aware of other music. My lot on my label, I'm just trying to do the best I can.
Solar music.
Yeah, I'm just everything that we do is we're trying to do it the best we can do it. And I've got a couple new artists. Of course, there's John doing 1 or 2 people I can't talk about yet because the things aren't signed, but there's some really good music hopefully coming down the pike. I am doing a thing a little bit off the track, which is going to be singles. November 1st, we're going to be launching a thing of just singles. I have so many people who've only done 1 song, like Terry Sylvester from the Hollies. I did an orchestra version of He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. Little Anthony from Little Anthony and the Imperials.
Mm-hmm.
I have a duet between him and Carmen Harrell from Cirque du Soleil. Great song.
Wow.
Orchestra. I'm doing the 60th anniversary of the song Sealed with a Kiss from my friend Brian Hyland. So that's a reorchestration of the song Sealed with a Kiss. And I did a soundtrack for a movie that's coming out called Touch Me. And that soundtrack, the single, is going to be out on the singles label. So there'll be a whole section of projects that, a lot of people aren't just only buying singles. They're not doing albums,
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for taking time to join us, and stay on the line with Steve and I after we say goodbye to the audience. We'd love to have you on again. I know there's so many more stories. I'm sure Steve has all kinds of questions bouncing around in his head. Mine's like a Super Bowl in there. So we'll definitely have to do this again. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here on Yesshift with myself, Stephen Schinder, and Michael Franklin. And those of you watching on Drum Talk TV, thanks for joining us. And if you're watching the archive, thank you. Share it around. And everybody be well, be nice, and listen to some great music. And Steve and I will be back with more soon. Thanks so much, Michael.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.